Not a breakthrough, but more productive than expected. That's how the US president described the talks with the Kremlin that took place the day before. Donald Trump made a previously announced statement in the Oval Office and said that he might meet with Putin soon. According to Fox News, this was requested by the Russian side. And then a possible trilateral meeting with the presidents of Russia and Ukraine could take place. These statements were preceded by a 3-hour conversation between the US president's special representative Steve Witkoff and the Kremlin leader in Moscow, as well as phone talks between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy, which, according to media reports, were also joined by the German Chancellor, the British Prime Minister, the NATO Secretary General, and the President of Finland. The President of Ukraine said that all partners share the same position. The war must be ended.
It seems that Russia is now more inclined toward a ceasefire. The pressure on them is working. But the main thing is that they don't deceive us in the details. Neither us nor the United States.
New American tariffs on imports from many countries, including ours, have come into effect. Ukraine was included in the list of countries whose tariffs are set at the minimum rate of 10%. Meanwhile, for example, the European Union received a 15% tariff rate, just like Japan and South Korea. Imports from Taiwan, Vietnam, and Bangladesh will face 20% tariffs. For Switzerland, Donald Trump set tariffs at 39%, and for Syria, Laos, and Burma, 40%. Some of the highest tariffs will apply to India. This comes after the US president imposed additional tariffs on New Delhi the day before, due to its refusal to stop buying Russian oil. The overall tariff on Indian goods will be about 50%. Journalists have calculated that import taxes in the US have reached their highest level in 100 years. However, it is American consumers who will have to pay for this. According to the findings from Yale University's esteemed budget lab, it is projected that imported goods will subsequently cost them a significant 18% more.
In Moscow, negotiations between the representative of the US President, Steve Witkoff, and Putin have concluded. They lasted 3 hours. Trump's representative left the Kremlin without comment. In Moscow, the conversation was described as constructive. President Trump previously noted that Washington's further actions will depend precisely on this communication. According to reports, he plans to address the nation from the Oval Office today at 11:30 p.m. Kyiv time. Putin will most likely reject Trump's ultimatum to end the war in Ukraine, the deadline for which expires on August 8th. This was reported by Reuters, citing its own sources. On Tuesday, the U.S. president spoke by phone with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The White House remains silent on this matter, but the president of Ukraine shared some details of the conversation. TSN's own correspondent, Usha Olga Koshelenko, has the details.
This will already be the 5th personal meeting between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin. Unlike the previous ones, this meeting is taking place against a backdrop of heightened tensions in relations. The President of the United States has set a deadline of August 8th for Russia to cease fire. In response to the provocative rhetoric of Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev, Donald Trump demonstratively moved 2 American nuclear submarines closer to Russia. Witkoff flew to Moscow again at the invitation of the Russian side, the American leader said, specifying that based on the results of this meeting, he would make a decision regarding sanctions against Russia. However, when asked whether he still supports the idea of 100% tariffs on secondary trade with Russia, as he stated in July, he somewhat backtracked.
Well, I never set a percentage, but we will be doing quite a lot. We'll see what happens over the next fairly short period of time. We'll see what happens. I know they have a meeting tomorrow. We have a meeting with Russia tomorrow. We'll see what happens. We'll make that decision then.
What is Putin's mood? Sources in the global media give conflicting assessments. Yes, Bloomberg claims that the Kremlin is considering a ceasefire in the air as a concession to Trump, meaning they are open to the possibility of not using drones and missiles if Ukraine agrees to do the same. At the same time, Reuters sources assure that the Russian general staff is promising Putin that the Ukrainian front will collapse in 2 or 3 months, so there is no reason for a truce. On Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy had a phone conversation with Trump. The White House did not make any statements regarding this. Zelenskyy spoke about his conversation with Trump in his evening address.
He is very well informed. He knows about the Russian strikes, knows about the situation at the front, about how the Russians are now trying to make their attacks more intense. We in Ukraine fully support the American proposal for an immediate ceasefire. We have already tried many different formats for how to stop the fighting, how to stop the killings. We have talked and proposed to Russia a silence in the skies, no such strikes, missiles, drones, and in general no attacks on civilian infrastructure, and specifically no strikes on the energy sector. All of this was violated by the Russians, and in a very cynical way.
One of the main levers of pressure on Russia is the price cap on Russian oil, says Zelenskyy. Trump said the same thing recently in an interview with CNBC. A further $10 drop in the price of Russian oil per barrel will leave Putin with no choice because, supposedly, his economy is in terrible shape. The main buyers of Russian energy resources remain China and India. For the latter, Trump has already raised tariffs on the resale of Russian hydrocarbons on the open market. Delhi was outraged because the states themselves supposedly trade with the Russians. India claims that the United States imports Russian uranium, chemicals, and fertilizers, while at the same time criticizing their import of energy resources.
I don't know anything about that. I'll have to check on that. We'll get back to you later.
At the same time, the United States continues to sell weapons to its European partners, who in turn supply them to Ukraine. The Netherlands was the first to make a purchase worth 500 million euros. Next, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark made purchases totaling another $500 million. This includes, in particular, the acquisition of missiles for Patriot air defense systems, Zelenskyy said, and he thanked all the partners and personally NATO Secretary General Ruda for streamlining the process. From Washington, United States, Ol Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko, TSN 1+1.
And it has become known how Donald Trump will punish India for refusing to stop buying Russian oil. The U.S. president threatened New Delhi with additional tariffs, and now we officially know that they will amount to 25%. The corresponding decree is already available on the White House website. The new tariffs will take effect on September 17th, and they will apply to Indian goods imported into America. Earlier, Donald Trump urged India to stop buying Russian oil, but the authorities there refused, as they make significant profits from reselling fuel from the aggressor country. The United States has approved the sale of services to Ukraine for the repair of M777 howitzers. The total value of the package is $203.5 million. The U.S. State Department reported that the first part of the contract includes the sale of military equipment to Ukraine, repair services, and support for the howitzers and related equipment. The second contract, worth $99.5 million, provides for transportation and logistics services. The main contractor will be selected from among the approved U.S. suppliers. As clarified in Washington, this agreement will contribute to achieving the foreign policy and national security goals of the United States by enhancing the security of the partner country, since it is a driving force for political stability and economic progress in Europe. Ethiopia has refused Russia's request to lease passenger planes. The national carrier stated directly, no agreement was reached because Moscow is under sanctions. The supply of new aircraft to the aggressor country was restricted after the full-scale invasion. Russians have also faced difficulties repairing the aircraft they already have. As a result, there have already been several dangerous incidents during passenger flights in the aggressor country. To ease the situation, Moscow turned to negotiations with the Ethiopian authorities. They wanted to lease not only planes from them, but also crews and a range of services, including maintenance. Earlier, the media remind us Russia had unsuccessfully made similar offers to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Qatar. In Ethiopia, the press notes, most of the planes are leased, so they would have had to get permission from the owners. However, Moscow has already been refused, with the explanation that sanctions are in place and that they themselves lack enough planes for their own needs.